I didn't even realize that I was bleeding till someone told me when we stopped running.
A student hurt during the Morgan State shooting is sharing her story. She's walking us through the terrifying attack as police search for persons of interest. The leader of a local NAACP chapter is calling out Brandon Scott's handling of the Morgan State shooting, his sharp criticism for the mayor's crime-fighting plan.
This is not necessarily a national phenomenon. This level of violence in Baltimore is Baltimore.
The embattled Maryland State School Superintendent stepping down tomorrow. Project Baltimore examines where students are still being failed and potential violations of state law. Plus, Fox 45 News has been demanding answers from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement about the Brooklyn Day mass shooting for months, and we're not the only ones.
It matters where the money's originating from, and the money's originating from the taxpayers' pockets.
How some city leaders are looking to hold the office accountable for your tax dollars.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Well, the Baltimore Police Department is asking for your help tonight to find these persons of interest in Tuesday night's mass shooting at Morgan State University.
This video is taken near the shooting site and appears to show 4 people moving around campus. Now, police still haven't made any arrests, and anyone with information is asked to call Metro Crime Stoppers at the number on your screen. Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. The shooting left 5 people injured. 4 of them were Morgan State University students.
And tonight, the community still continues to process that shooting as violence grips Morgan State during homecoming week again.
And everyone was running, and we couldn't see. All I saw was the glass window shatter. I heard the bullets.
We have team coverage as Mackenzie Frost and Vincent Hill looking at the questions surrounding Mayor Brandon Scott's response to the shooting.
We begin with Keith Daniels, hearing from a student who was feet from the scene of the crime when those shots rang out. Keith?
Well, Kai and Mary, her name is Samantha. She says she was walking out of a building when suddenly that gunfire erupted right across the street from her. And tonight, her injuries, her story. Morgan State University in the light of day, with few people on campus after an unforgettable night of violence. Samantha Morrell.
I didn't even realize that I was bleeding till someone told me when we stopped running.
An 18-year-old freshman among those students caught amid the gunfire Tuesday. Samantha was inside the Murphy Fine Arts Center for the coronation events, standing near the front door when bullets pierced the windows.
Everyone was running, and we couldn't see. All I saw was the glass window shatter. I heard the bullets, and it just came down on me, and I was just like, okay. So now it was just run. The only thought that I had was run. Stay low and run.
She was wounded. Shard glass hit her leg in several places, not realizing it, she says, until later.
I was just in shock. I didn't want to believe what was happening was real.
But it was real. Samantha says police and staff escorted her and others from the rear of the building to her dorm at Blount Towers, where she waited in a friend's room behind locked doors in fear with an active shooter situation unfolding.
We turned off all the lights. We tried to keep as quiet as possible. We sat in the farthest corner away from the window and away from the door of the room. We were just praying to God that we could stay safe, and everybody outside was safe.
Traumatic events during homecoming week, with 5 people shot, 4 of them students. No suspect yet, but police releasing images of persons of interest. Meantime this week, classes are canceled, homecoming on hold.
It's just sad that the innocent have to suffer from now for the guilty. So I hate that our weekend has to end like this.
It's like we can't get a break. We can't get a break. And I understand it was for the right reason, but it's heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking and frightening for Samantha, too, who's home in New Jersey with her family.
A feeling of disorientation, but I'm also relieved to be home where it's, I don't want to say safer, but I'm not where danger was.
Well, Samantha says when she called her mother, both her parents, her father and mother, decided that they were going to pick her up. They were here just within hours of the incident. But tonight, she told me, when classes resume, she'll be back here at Morgan State. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
And we want to show you those persons of interest once again. Police shared this video late last night, which appears to show a group of 4 people walking around campus. Anyone with information is asked to call Metro Crime Stoppers at the number on your screen.
Well, residents are turning to Mayor Brandon Scott to address the relentless violence in Baltimore, as the mayor says it is time for change at the national level. But what about the local level? Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost pressed the mayor about his plan to address the crisis.
The mayor continues to look to Congress for help to curb this gun violence. And now the mayor is skirting new questions we're asking him about support for legislation that has been introduced here in Maryland that supporters say would have sent the message to criminals that gun violence wouldn't be tolerated. Whether it's on college campuses, community block parties, or on a school lunch break at Popeyes, the bloodshed in Baltimore is happening everywhere. Mayor Brandon Scott looking to leaders down the road in Washington to help break this cycle of bullets, cutting lives short.
We cannot continue to ignore the elephant in the room. This is a national issue that has to be addressed at the national level.
When we pressed him on why congressional assistance is the right approach, he says,
because it's their job.
Why can't you and other state leaders push for legislation at the state level to ensure there are tougher penalties for people who shoot and kill other people?
I think that when you look at Maryland's laws around guns and gun violence, we have some of the best in the country, Mackenzie. The guns are coming in from other places, other states. That is why this is a national issue. It's a both and, Mackenzie, not an either or.
Thursday morning on Fox 45 News.
I'm not surprised seeing the recent Goucher poll that 53% of residents have an unfavorable view of the mayor because of statements like this.
Community activist Eurypsy Morgan says people in the city are searching for solutions, not national appeals.
They want to know why there are not stricter penalties for people who are carrying guns illegally in their communities. Why would you not go down the street in Annapolis where the laws are being made?
We sent questions to Mayor Brandon Scott Thursday about legislation at the state level, asking, why didn't you support the Violent Firearms Offender Act or the Repeat Violent Offenders Act in Annapolis for the last 3 years? If the plans are introduced again this year, will you support the legislation and use your position to urge other lawmakers to support them too? If not, what specific bills are you working with the Baltimore City delegation to introduce to hold gun offenders accountable? Is it time for mandatory minimums to be considered in Maryland for gun offenders? The mayor's office not even acknowledging the questions, ignoring the email and refusing to answer. While the mayor continues to punt on taking local action at the state level, mass shootings in Baltimore continue to climb, and families are forever impacted by the people who decide to pull a trigger. The Violent Firearms Offender Act and similar legislation have been introduced by Republicans year after year, and each time there hasn't been enough support from Democrats for those plans to move forward. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
A Goucher poll released this week shows Baltimore residents may be looking for a change in leadership. The poll surveyed more than 700 voters. Only 27% are backing Brandon Scott, while 39% would vote for former Mayor Dixon. At a town hall in West Baltimore last night, Dixon said it's time for change.
I like my private life. I also love this city. I know it's going to take an experienced leader to move the city forward in an aggressive way that right now is not happening.
Fox 45 News has reached out to both Mayor Scott and Sheila Dixon, inviting the two candidates to participate in a series of Fox 45 News town halls leading up to the Democratic primary. Dixon has agreed to attend a Fox 45 News town hall October 24th, where she'll answer your questions and share her plans and vision to address Baltimore's biggest issues. Mayor Scott has not responded so far.
That brings us to our question of the day. Do you trust Mayor Scott to keep your community safe? So far, 97% of people who voted say no. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
Another community leader is demanding more from city leaders in the wake of the Morgan State University shooting. Fox 45's Vincent Hill spoke to the Randallstown NAACP president about what he wants to see from the mayor. Vincent?
Yeah, Kai, Coleman says what's happening in Baltimore is quite simply a result of the leadership in Baltimore.
This is not happening all over the country.
NAACP President Ryan Coleman voicing his frustration with Mayor Brandon Scott's response to Morgan State's mass shooting.
This is not just a Baltimore thing.
Does it seem like sometimes he passes the buck and shifts blame from himself?
I mean, he's right in a way that Congress can help. He's wrong in the fact that he's the mayor.
Coleman says the only thing putting Baltimore in the national spotlight is its crime.
This is not necessarily a national phenomenon. This level of violence in Baltimore is Baltimore. It's becoming normal. We can't have it become normal, where a 15-year-old is killed outside of a school and it's a one-day conversation. Then 2 people are beat, 1 raped, then another woman is killed. Then a sheriff's deputy is killed. Then the Morgan State. I mean, these are national stories happening.
Coleman says the mayor is losing the fight against crime. Now, when you say he's defeated, what do you mean?
When I say he's defeated, it's almost like it's nothing that we can do. The only thing we can do is hold press conferences, get everyone together, have a large police presence after 5 people have already been shot. I need him to do all he can do to stop this violence.
Coleman also calling out current juvenile crime laws, which many say is part of the city's crime crisis. What do you think is driving this juvenile crime crisis?
I think that people get confused with accountability and putting your arm around a juvenile. As far as some of the juvenile justice laws, I think we have an obligation to look at those, to see if they're contributing to what's going on. But is it really controversial that if a juvenile steals a car 3 and 4 times, that they shouldn't be on home monitoring?
And Coleman also calling on Governor Moore to do more about repeat offenders. Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Vincent, thank you. The NAACP, just the latest group calling for change to Maryland's juvenile justice laws. We've also heard from a dozen state's attorneys across Maryland who represent more than 80% of the state's population. They say their hands are tied when it comes to holding young offenders accountable.
They know that, nothing's really going to happen to them if they keep their crime in a certain limit of types of crime.
They come in, we can't detain them, they're back in the community the next day.
We all have the same sad song, no matter where we are in the state.
State's attorneys are taking issue with 2 laws. The Juvenile Justice Reform Act limits children 13 and under from facing most charges, and the Child Interrogation Act prevents police from questioning juvenile suspects without an attorney or parent's permission.
House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are 2 of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis. If you want to contact them about public safety legislation, their phone numbers and email addresses are on your screen.
And if you'd like to connect with more of your elected leaders, our website makes it easy. Go to foxbaltimore.com, click on the menu at the top left of your screen, select lawmakers. From there, you can enter your home address to find the official who represents you at the local, state, and federal levels.
All right, we are tracking the next weather maker, and for now, it's quiet, but there it is. We've got rain out to our west, and it is moving east, and it likely begins to get here tomorrow. It's been a few dry and very warm days, making it up to 81 today. Could have a patch of low clouds, maybe a little light fog when you wake up in the morning. Temperatures in the 60s by lunchtime. Slim chance of a shower, and that goes into the afternoon as well. Another warm day tomorrow, but that is all going to change by the O's game on Saturday. Going to let you know how cool it's going to get. My Weather Authority forecast.
Jonathan, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, MONSE still facing questions about transparency following the Brooklyn Day mass shooting, but answers are hard to come by. The steps some city leaders want to take to hold them accountable. The case grabbed national headlines, and now it is back in the spotlight. What happened when Adnan Syed appeared before the state Supreme Court, and why this decision could set a precedent for many more cases to come. And tomorrow, the Maryland State School Superintendent's last day on the job. Project Baltimore examining the serious questions about transparency in the State Department of Education and how it's impacting students. The embattled Maryland State Superintendent of Schools, Mohammed Chaudhry, will resign effective tomorrow.
As Chris Papps explains, his resignation follows a series of Project Baltimore investigations raising questions over transparency within the Maryland State Department of Education and potential violations of state law.
Mohammed Chaudhry is stepping down after just 2 years as the Maryland State Superintendent of Schools, marking the end of a tumultuous term. In his final goodbye, he penned this op-ed in the Baltimore Sun, touting what he calls critical progress. But Project Baltimore took a closer look at his performance. The op-ed, published this week in the Baltimore Sun, reflects on Chaudhry's 2+ years leading the State Department of Education and reads as a record of his accomplishments. Among them, Chaudhry cites improvement on state test scores, saying literacy results are better than before the pandemic. And in math, students are showing signs of recovery from COVID learning loss. While literacy rates have improved across the state, lagging math scores continue to raise alarm. Project Baltimore analyzed the spring 2023 state test results and found at least 200 Maryland schools where 5% or fewer students tested proficient in math. We also found 13 Baltimore City high schools where 0 students among those tested scored proficient in math. The op-ed does not address math scores in Baltimore City, but Chaudhry does say grant funding under his leadership helps city schools improve English test scores by 4.5 percentage points in grades 3 through 8. That is also true. But even with the improvement, only 25% of 3rd through 8th graders in Baltimore City schools are proficient in English. That's the lowest in the state by 5 full percentage points.
These schools are 5 minutes from this building.
In June, Chaudhry acknowledged strained relations with lawmakers in Annapolis, even writing an apology letter for his missteps. But in this op-ed, he says he changed the way the Maryland State Department of Education functions, making it an effective operation. That is not what we heard from former employees like Robert Eccles, who testified before the state board, saying Chaudhry's leadership created a toxic workplace culture.
Transformational leaders actually lead people and don't disparage them. They invite feedback and can take criticism without retaliation.
In this op-ed, Chaudhry never says why he's leaving, but his resignation follows a series of Project Baltimore investigations that raise concerns about his leadership.
Mr. Superintendent, have you ever used the Signal application and commission of your job?
I have no comment. Thank you much. Appreciate it. For my job?
Well, Project Baltimore first showed you that video last month, exposing how Chaudhry used the encrypted messaging app Signal to conduct state business. We obtained screenshots, some of which appear to show Chaudhry berating an employee, supporting allegations that the superintendent created a toxic workplace culture.
This I pondered for months, taking this stand.
Days after FOX45 broke that story, 3 Republican lawmakers took a strong stance, calling on Chaudhry to step down immediately.
And if you're not going to have the transparency, let somebody else do it.
At the same time, Governor Wes Moore, a Democrat, also came out strong when asked about Project Baltimore's reporting.
I want transparency, I want accountability, and I want a superintendent that believes in it and can deliver it.
Just 9 days after Project Baltimore exposed how Chaudhry used that encrypted messaging app for work, he announced he would step down. But this was not the first time that he had come under fire. Project Baltimore this past summer also reported how Chaudhry used a secondary email account to conduct state business, and that his state-issued cell phone was set to auto-delete text messages after 30 days. 12 of those messages were deleted after FOX45 filed a public records request to obtain them, a potential violation of state law. Months before that, we exposed how MSDE, without telling the public, removed state test scores from its website, heavily redacted them, and then reposted them, a move that kept parents and taxpayers from seeing how poorly some schools are performing.
Mr. Chaudhary.
That decision by MSDE sparked backlash. But when we tried to question Chaudhary about it,
Test scores on the website.
he locked himself behind a door. In the wake of our findings, lawmakers and special interest groups have demanded answers, asking the Attorney General, State Prosecutor, and Inspector General for Education to investigate.
There cannot continue to be scandal after scandal after scandal.
These schools are not thriving.
All of this proved to be too much. Sources within the State Department of Education told us the school board's support for Chaudhary deteriorated with each new Project Baltimore finding. The state superintendent agreed to resign and transition to a new role as senior advisor to the state school board. His $310,000 salary will stay the same until his contract expires in June 2024. Now, the state board will conduct a nationwide search for the next state superintendent of Maryland Public Schools. The state school board appointed Dr. Carrie Wright as the interim superintendent until a permanent replacement can be found. Dr. Wright served as the Mississippi state superintendent, where she's credited with improving literacy scores. Project Baltimore in the coming weeks will take a closer look at what Dr. Wright did to improve those reading scores in Mississippi, a state that had been struggling for decades. And could those strategies also work in Maryland? I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Deadly drugs, automatic weapons, luxury apartments used as stash houses. I'm Alexa Ashwell. In this week's Maryland's Most Wanted, the announcement of a takedown, a drug trafficking operation happening right here in Maryland, and the search for 2 suspects.
And the next weather maker taking us into fall, at least weather-wise. Let's take a look. Temperatures start off 79 tomorrow. Could see a spot shower or 2. Better chance of some rain on Saturday. That's a O's game, 68 and 61 on Sunday. Temperatures, again, the big fall. Look at those lows in the 40s. And by the way, are we going to have rain at the O's game? Well, there could be a few showers that are moving out for first pitch, 68. But I think the rest of the game is just kind of chilly and breezy with temperatures in the 60s. I'm going to let you know how it looks if you're going to be checking out the leaves this weekend. That's up in my Weather Authority forecast.
And a live look at Camden Yards as we head to break. The O's playoff opener against the Rangers less than 48 hours away now. Rocco DeSangro has a preview when we return.
through postseason baseball on Fox 45 is sponsored by Johns Hopkins Children's Center.
Best of 5 series. Texas Rangers.
Well, ahead at 10:30, new calls for an audit into the mayor's office of neighborhood safety and engagement. Why they're being held to a different standard, according to one city council member.
Adnan Syed appears in front of the Maryland Supreme Court. We hear from both sides in the argument over victims' rights, as the decision could set precedent. Fox 45 News is following 3 big stories at 10:30. Adnan Syed appears in front of Maryland's highest court. We hear from the Lee family attorney as Syed himself debates the issues surrounding victims' rights.
Calls for an audit into the mayor's office of neighborhood safety and engagement. Why one council member says MONSE isn't being held to the same standard as other city organizations.
Mayor Brandon Scott holds the swearing-in ceremony for the new fire chief James Wallace and new police commissioner Richard Worley. Both men were formally confirmed by the city council Tuesday night.
During today's ceremony, both said they are ready to bring more stability to their departments.
Let's give our new fire chief a big round of applause.
I will continue to work tirelessly to build upon our department's capabilities and to further ensure the safety and well-being of our community.
Commissioner of the Baltimore City Police Department.
Commissioner of the Baltimore City Police Department.
According to the Constitution of Maryland.
According to the Constitution of Maryland.
And the laws of Baltimore City.
And the laws of Baltimore City.
Let's give our police commissioner congratulations.
Thank Mayor Scott for even nominating me and sticking with me. We've had a rough couple months, so I want to thank him for sticking with me.
Worley's swearing in comes as he faces questions about the department's handling of 2 recent high-profile cases. One week after Jason Billingsley's arrest for the murder of Pavel Lepere. Some are wondering why police didn't release information about him sooner, since he was connected to a rape and arson 3 days earlier, according to police. Worley also says he wasn't aware of some of Billingsley's background.
I was not alerted about the flyer and the wanted poster, and that's not uncommon, because what happens is our detectives and our supervisors, there's several levels that has to go through, and they make a decision, a conscious decision, after looking at the public safety factor.
Every police officer who's been trained in any kind of investigation of a violent crime should have known immediately to put his information out, because it was clear from just basic police training, from the patrol officer to the commissioner, that his information needed to go out.
Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott addressed the issue with BPD, saying crimes like rape need to reach Worley's attention. Then there was a Brooklyn Day mass shooting. Police faced criticism for a lack of communication and preparedness leading up to the shooting. 2 people died, 28 others were shot. Worley admitted a mistake, saying police should have been better prepared.
Well, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement also facing questions about transparency following the Brooklyn Day mass shooting. But getting details from City Hall about MONSE continues to be a struggle. Now some city leaders say there needs to be an audit. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost investigates.
The Baltimore City Charter requires agencies within City Hall to be audited every few years, but MONSE isn't one of them. And it comes as there continues to be questions surrounding how the agency is spending millions of tax dollars. The Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, or MONSE, oversees several gun violence prevention programs, like the Group Violence Reduction Strategy and the controversial Safe Streets. MONSE created in 2020 when Mayor Brandon Scott took the helm of the city, but the agency is not on the list of audits performed.
Welcome. We are here for the Biennial Audits Oversight Commission.
Inside City Hall, the Biennial Audit Commission has the authority to ask the city auditor for a review. That commission meets twice a year and includes these 7 members.
It should be an annual situation.
Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer is a member of that commission.
MONSE is a city agency. It is right here in City Hall, and so an agency like that should just be part of the agencies that are audited.
And he's not alone. Fox 45 News asking all of the members about a MONSE audit. In addition to Councilman Schleifer, Councilman Eric Costello, Comptroller Bill Henry, and Inspector General Isabel Mercedes Kemming, all telling Fox 45 News they support auditing MONSE. The rest of the members, Councilman Christopher Burnett, Council President Nick Mosby, and the city's finance director, ignoring the question. While Safe Streets is run day to day by 2 nonprofits, the operations overseen by MONSE staff, and the funding comes from taxpayers. Yet the city remains tight-lipped about how the gun violence prevention program spends $20 million. Another reason why Schleifer says a deep dive into the financial records of the city agency is necessary.
We've heard in the past that, hey, we can't answer that question because that's not us. That's Catholic Charities, that's LifeBridge, that's some other entity. We know it is taxpayer money, and so it doesn't matter, that it's going to a separate entity or a pass-through. It matters where the money's originating from, and the money's originating from the taxpayers' pockets.
Especially when MONSE continues to expand staff. Long-term funding sources remain a concern, and the agency is without a permanent leader. While questions continue to swirl about the effectiveness of Safe Streets, transparency surrounding the program, and the workers on the payroll. To permanently add MONSE to the list of routine audits, it would require a charter amendment. But right now, it's up to the chair of this commission, which is Councilman Eric Costello, who could ask the city auditor to perform one. Right now, it's unclear if that will happen. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
City police say 256 cars were stolen in the last week of September, down 7% from the previous 7 days. As of September 30th, more than 8,200 cars have been stolen in Baltimore this year. That's more than triple the number stolen in the first 9 months of 2022. Law enforcement officials partially blame juvenile crime laws for a surge in thefts among young people.
They are choosing the kid under age 13 to be the driver. So we have 11-year-olds with no license, no training, driving these stolen cars at high speeds.
What takes place in Baltimore County and Baltimore City directly affects my jurisdiction. They're stealing them, coming out to our jurisdiction, committing the crime, and then they're going back to wherever they came from.
Police say young people know the laws and may be more likely to steal cars knowing they won't face serious consequences.
Adnan Syed was at the Maryland Supreme Court today, part of an appeal that could decide if he remains a free man. The appeal may also set a precedent for victims' rights in future cases. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker was in Annapolis for the hearing this morning.
In Maryland Supreme Court Thursday, Adnan Syed's freedom was back on the line. Syed served more than 20 years in prison for the killing of Hae Min Lee in 1999. His case becoming the subject of national attention thanks to the podcast Serial. But he's been a free man for more than a year after a Baltimore judge threw out his conviction when evidence was uncovered regarding other possible suspects.
Adnan has been home with his family for a little more than a year now, after decades of fighting to prove his innocence.
At the center of Thursday's hearing, Hae Min Lee's brother, Young Lee's, rights. Lee was unable to attend the hearing in person that set Syed free, instead making a statement over Zoom.
Mr. Lee was not given adequate notice, was not given the right to attend the criminal justice proceeding, and was not given a meaningful right to be heard. That's all we're asking for.
He then filed an appeal arguing his rights were violated, saying he wasn't given sufficient notice. But before a ruling was made, Syed's charges were dropped. A Maryland appeals court in March ordered a new hearing and reinstated Syed's conviction, saying Lee's rights to notice and attend were violated. But the appeals court also found Lee did not have a right to be heard at the hearing. And then the Maryland Supreme Court stepped in, agreeing to take up appeals from both sides today, considering whether Baltimore City Court violated the rights of Lee. Lee's attorneys are urging the Supreme Court to recognize the rights of victims and their representatives to participate.
We're asking the Maryland Supreme Court to uphold those rights, to send this case back down to the trial court and mandate that the state present evidence, whatever evidence it has, so that we can see that evidence, we can examine that evidence, and you, the public, can examine that evidence so that we all can make a judgment as to what happened here.
Syed's attorneys argue the point was moot when prosecutors dropped charges ending the criminal case against him, and Lee's rights were not violated because he attended virtually.
This appeal is about whether Mr. Lee's rights were satisfied by his remote attendance at the vacatur hearing, and whether the state had the power to decide it no longer wished to prosecute a case it did not believe in.
Syed himself speaking out after the hearing in the name of justice for him, his family, and the Lee family.
We just wanted to say thank you to everybody for over all these years who just provided us with all the support and the encouragement. Our family, it just means so much to us, and we look forward to hearing the court's decision, and we're hoping that in the end, we'll have a chance to prove justice, not just for Hae's family, but for our family as well.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
The court will issue an opinion at a later date, reconvening November 3rd at 10 a.m. Fox 45 News will continue to follow the Adnan Syed case. You can find all of our reporting online at foxbaltimore.com.
The road through postseason baseball on Fox 45 is sponsored by Johns Hopkins Children's Center.
Birdland, there had to be a time during all of those losing seasons where each of you kind of wondered when the O's would get back to the postseason, and the 2023 team answered. Saturday, the O's begin their quest for the series with a best-of-5 series with the Texas Rangers, and they've spent the week at Camden Yards preparing for Game 1 of the ALDS. That takes place Saturday at 1 p.m. Game 2 at Camden Yards on Sunday. The two teams will head to Texas for Game 3 on Tuesday on Fox 45. Then, if necessary, Game 4, then back at Camden Yards on Friday for an if necessary.